This is a story in the Northwest U.S. at Cape Flattery, written in 2002. I will make an assumption. Assumptions are most often imperfect, but I will assume that there has been a time or times when you felt something other than what we consider normal. The words evolved for those feelings, abnormal and paranormal, color the feeling with an imperfect hue. It is difficult to convey expression or something that I, at least, have inadequate words with which to paint. It is a feeling so different, so inexplicable, so unexplainable, that words fail to give a sense of it. It is experiential, and we can only talk around it. Words only describe the margin between it and us. It is not that the feeling is subtle, for it is not. It is strong. It is not an undefined feeling, but the definition lies more in the intuitive sensing of it rather than the telling of it. I sense that it comes from outside of me, is external, but I have no proof of that sensation. It could easily come from entirely within. It may be entirely personal, and yet for some reason I feel it's universal. It is a presence where and when there is no, as of yet, measurable, definable dimensions to the presence. Cape Flattery is the very northwestern point of land in the contiguous United States. This is the current ancestral land of the Makah people, but there is something that was there long before men and will remain long after. The shore is rugged, bounded by the water of the Pacific to the west and the water of the Strait of Juan de Fuca on the north. The distinction is bogus, since the water is one. Cliffs rise hundreds of feet above wave-worn caves. The sea that day was placid, a calm, receding tide of emerald green water directly below, near the shore, deepening in the depth and in color until some indistinct point beyond the lighthouse on Tatoosh Island, beyond which lay a silvered sea in the ebbing afternoon. A sign near one of the few beaches noted you could hear the rumbling of the earth as the wave broke in the caves, shaking the earth beneath your feet. I sat, eyes closed, and tried to hear and feel the few retreating surges into those ship-sized caverns. I felt nothing and heard little that I could contribute to those hollows, but I sensed power. It was neither malevolent nor benevolent. It was neutral or uncaring or impartial or uninterested. I knew with certainty it could crush me in several ways in an instant. I felt its largeness, its breadth and depth, although I cannot tell you what it was other than unfathomably powerful. As I walked down the gravel trail from the parking area, I had kept thinking that I was not going to like the return trip. Although not steep, the grade of the trail was distinctly downhill. Halfway down, I passed a man my age who was breathing hard. "It's quite the climb back up," he said, resting at a railing beside the trail. I thought for a moment of turning back, but would never have done so after his statement. Male pride ranks high, along with ignorance, in the folly of men. I continued down the gradient, flanked by good-sized western red cedar, Sitka spruce, and the moss-veiled limbs of maples whose leaves were as big as a dinner plate. The scrub of the forest was thick in some areas, while elsewhere yielding to ferns or a close crop covering of oxalis with its clover-shaped leaves. Soon a cedar walkway replaced much of the mostly hard-packed trail, making a flat run, then making a series of down sections, followed by another flat run as it crossed over wet, boggy areas. Here and there were rounded fence post railings, but much of the walkway was without railing. Anything narrow than its 2 foot width might have felt uncomfortable. On the walk down, I began to feel, to sense, to intuit. There were no trolls in this elfin forest. There were no dark, malignant things, but there was something, the beginning of a sensation. I explored each lookout and varied vantage points, starting with those facing southwest, and then moved to those round the lip of the cape to the northeast. Often the path was at cliff's edge with thick privet or a sentinel railing at land's end. It struck me that most of the railings were cantilevered outward, which gave a view over the drop, but it felt to me a bit too inviting. Acrophobia is defined as a fear of heights. I do not have that fear. I fear that the urge to jump from a height will be irresistible. It may manifest itself in the same way, a deep hole in the stomach, perhaps a slight sense of vertigo and slight disorientation, and a throbbing at the temples from increased blood flow. But for me, in addition, there is some attraction, some sense of definition of separation in distance and time. It is a sense of possibility, although that possibility is the seduction of self annihilation. Sometimes I sat or stood and closed my eyes and listened, occasionally inhaling deeply to try to gather whatever musky scents I could with my highly imperfect sense of smell. I watched and studied the visual rhythms near and far, with and without binoculars. A pair of puffins repeatedly dove deep and long. An orange footed duck just inside one cave dove more shallowly. Occasionally, plaintive, descending gull cries imposed their shrillness on a stiller world. The calls that surprised me the most were those of the crows. During my descent, there seemed to be a mob of crows, or more accurately, a murder of crows, as a group is called. They called loudly in many voices. Further down, I heard the crows in fewer numbers. As I was about to walk back up the trail, two came and landed in a tree about 20 feet away. They preened their feathers, showing their dark, iridescent sheen, and the female made three raspy, throaty calls as she bobbed her head and breast down. The male replied with two loud caws as he stretched his neck upwards with each utterance. I said to them, "Good evening, sister and brother Crow." They paid me no heed, or if they did, they did not show it, although I noted they sat where they could keep me in sight. The two black lovers kept up their conversation for perhaps 5 minutes, with the female speaking first and the longest, and generally followed by the 2 note retort of the male, although he did not always choose to reply. He would respond after her next vocalization to affirm his interest, real or feigned, a strategy used by wise males of many species. After a time, I turned in the dusky light and started walking back along the wooden boardwalk. The sensation was strong, irrepressible, great power, great presence at rest, calmness, stillness, not peace, but placidity. I did not feel fearful, but humble and insignificant in comparison to that which was around me, both seen and unseen. As I walked along the spires of the forest trees, I kept waiting to come to the steeper sections of the trail that I had remembered, but it seemed surprisingly level. I stopped to look at several flowers and examined a shelf of fungus growing like a half saucer perpendicular to the trunk of a dead and decaying tree. The steep part of the trail never came. I kept trying to remember if it was around the next corner, over the next plank section, but it was an unexpectedly gentle rise all the way back to the parking lot. It was odd, but I did not question why. it was so. It simply added to the sense of deep mystery out there somewhere and everywhere in the slowly waning sunlight. As I started driving back down the road towards the town of Nia Bay, I remembered a sign I passed on the way to the Cape that read, Ocean Beaches 1 mile. Normally, I find the margin of sea and land at the margin of day and night to be irresistible, but a thought came to me. It was actually more of a statement than a thought. Do not go there unless you want your life forever changed. I did not assume that was meant for the better or the worse, but I did not take that road that day.